because both parties won't come to the table on it.
That was PBM reform. We're all supportive of that, too. We're going to get that through. Why did Bernie Sanders stop this one, though? Because this was
so why don't you go
transparency
back to Washington and make that part of the negotiation?
This was part of all of it.
MAGA politician Dan Crenshaw was a guest on Abby Phillip's CNN show as part of a panel debate and discussion about healthcare. This also included Ana Navarro. We're going to take a look at clips of MAGA Dan Crenshaw debating with Ana Navarro, Abby Phillip, and others about healthcare. I want to share my thoughts on this as well. Let's get into it together.
Hello, everyone. I'm Abby Phillip in New York with a special edition of Newsnight. Joining the table tonight, Jennifer Welch and Brad Todd. They are here also with us. Congressman Dan Crenshaw, Ashley Allison, and Ana Navarro. Let's jump right into the reaction to what we heard tonight at CNN's town hall. The overriding message, Congressman, from AOC and Senator Sanders was that Republicans need to come to the negotiating table because health care is such an important issue.
Yeah, it was quite the message, quite the lesson in gaslighting. I mean, I'm impressed. You know, we got to take notes. If you ever want to be a professional gaslighter, take notes from these folks. I mean, she called it Mike Johnson's shutdown. I think she's forgetting she voted to shut the government down. She voted against a clean CR. There was no strings attached to that CR. In fact, a lot of things, speaking of healthcare, which they should like, extending the benefits to disproportionate share hospitals, that's low-income hospitals, extending telehealth as well. There was a lot of things they should like. They voted for very similar CRs multiple times. So making it sound like it's Mike Johnson's or Republican shutdown is such an enormous lie. I mean, it's gaslighting to the absurdity, level of extreme absurdity. So, I mean,
are you surprised that there has not been more? I mean, given what you're saying, I mean, the Republicans probably should be in a position to feel really confident in this moment, but there has not been a whole lot of backlash against Democrats. And in fact, polling suggests that Americans actually want Congress to address this healthcare subsidy issue.
Well,
are you surprised by that?
If you ask Americans if we should address a healthcare issue, I think most Americans would say, yes, address the issue, but there's a way to address issues. You don't just hold all of the government hostage in order to do so. And I can quote plenty of Democrats. I mean, Bernie Sanders himself, right, has said that. You don't hold the government hostage over a policy issue. We have like 20 examples of this. So how hypocritical can you be?
Look,
there is a way.
Trust me, the shoe is on the other foot in a massive way. Because Republicans used to be on the other side of the
Her very first speech to Congress when she was elected, she said it's not normal to shut down government when we don't get what you want. That's her very first speech. That's exactly what Democrats have done. There's a clean continuing resolution passed by the House against AOC's wishes. That's what they've always said is supposed to happen when we reach this point. And now they're trying to bring in an entirely different issue, which can be negotiated after. And by the way, the health care premiums she's talking about are expiring, that Bernie Sanders and she talked about tonight. Democrats made them expire.
Yes.
Democrats voted to make them expire when they controlled everything. This is their mess. They made it. And they're shutting the government down to demand someone else fix it.
The whole point of a temporary CR is to negotiate during it.
That, okay, maybe Democrats should negotiate. Should Republicans? Because I don't feel like they are.
Democrats have always said we should not hold the government hostage to those negotiations.
But you all are in power.
But you
don't have enough votes to pass it. So we have
enough votes to pass it. We can't stop your filibuster right now because you're shutting.
So you don't have enough votes?
No, because you're using the filibuster to shut down government.
Well, you don't have enough votes. You don't have 60. So that's a simple, filibuster. Whatever reason why you can't pass it, filibuster or not, you don't have 60 votes.
So how about we open the government then talk?
But you have to negotiate. And so I hear you.
So hold the government hostage?
Can I just say back to you?
Yeah.
You're holding the government hostage because Republicans won't. People are both stuck in the sand. And at the end of the day, let me finish my statement. At the end of the day, when the Republicans are in power, fact, you have to negotiate because you don't have 60 votes, fact. And Americans want their health care and they don't want these subsidies to expire, fact. So let's be adults and maybe both negotiate. But right now, you all are saying Democrats are being hostage takers when reality, so are the Republicans. You're both acting the same way.
Only Republicans have voted to keep the government
Let me get in on this. I think the guy who spoke last, who asked the last question, the guy that was channeling Johnny Cash in the audience, I think he articulated what you just said. And I think what most Americans want. I think when Americans hear Republicans blaming Democrats, Democrats blaming Republicans, It's like that Charlie Brown teacher, wah, 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 wah. Because the bottom line is we're into day, 15 of a government shutdown with no end in sight. There are government workers in Washington, D.C. having to make lines to go eat for free at Jose Andres' restaurants because they can't pay the bills and they can't afford groceries. That is shameful in this country. And what we got to call for is a damn compromise and for you all to actually get back to work and sit down with each other and hammer something down. My God, if Hamas and Israel could sit down and come up with a compromise,
you both have gotten very good lessons in gas.
So I love when MAGA politicians like Dan Crenshaw talk about the other side gaslighting, when these guys in MAGA are the masters of gaslighting. And Ana Navarro brings up a good point here about the government workers that, are struggling. They can't pay their bills. They don't know how they're going to buy groceries and all of that. Here's the leverage that MAGA has, that Republicans have. They don't care about any of that. The Democrats, who knows if all of them actually care. I'm talking about the Democrats in Congress, but they at least pay lip service to caring about regular people, which Republicans just don't even bother anymore at all. They're all in for just the billionaires and the CEOs and the corporations. They don't care about regular people. So it's hilarious that Dan Crenshaw and Brad Todd come on Abby Phillip show and say, well, if the Democrats would just, reopen the government and then we could just negotiate. The Republicans are betting on the Democrats giving in because they don't want there to continue to be such pain on so many of the American people, on government workers. Again, MAGA hates government workers. They want to get rid of all of them. So they don't care that they're struggling. They don't care that the ACA subsidies are going to go away. In fact, they relish the idea of the ACA subsidies going away because they don't think they should have existed to begin with. So what they're going to do is the Republicans are going to keep saying, okay, let's reopen the government so we can negotiate. And then if the government reopens, they're going to say, oh, we're not going to negotiate. Forget about that. They talk about hostage taking the country hostage. I've used this example before, but the Republicans, MAGA, the analogy that I like to use is you have a bank robber. In the process of robbing a bank, they've taken people hostage in the bank. And instead of the police negotiating with the bank robber, the hostage taker, they just blow up the bank and kill everybody inside. That's essentially what the Republican Party is right now. They don't care that people don't have health care. And Dan Crenshaw is going to get into all these things supposedly that Republicans did about health care. What a bunch of nonsense. You talk about gaslighting. Dan Crenshaw is gaslighting.
Well, you know what? What's interesting about what you're saying, I mean, the American people are also probably noticing that when Republicans were in power, they were fine with hostage taking. And when Democrats were arguing for clean CRs, now it's the exact opposite. So I'm not sure you can throw Democrats' words in their faces without also throwing Republicans' own actions in their faces in this particular moment?
So many things right now. Number one, Mike Johnson is protecting the Epstein files. They do not want to swear in that congresswoman because they do not want this to leak because there are fissures all over the MAGA movement. Secondly, Trump and his administration of sycophants have leaked everywhere. They want it to stay shut down. He's shutting down all of these different agencies. He is firing federal workers left and right. This is the dream of Project 2025. There are nefarious intentions under this. Every Republican and Democrat should be in D.C. right now working. Most of all, Moses Mike Johnson, who is this big Christian. If he's a big Christian, he should be teeing up, fighting for health care, fighting for the marginalized, fighting for the poor. But instead, he weaponizes his faith to lure voters in and then dicks them over every chance he can
Can we talk
get.
about fighting for health care real quick? Can we say a few things about Republicans fighting for health care real quick? I have some things that we should talk about.
Got a binder
how about the Lower Costs, More Transparency Act? So we passed that out of the House, bipartisan bill passed in 2023. Over 300 votes for that out of the House. Bernie Sanders was the chairman of the Health Committee in the Senate. The Democrats held the Senate. He refused to bring it to the floor. That was a bipartisan bill. The first step to lowering any healthcare costs, if you guys want to really get deep on healthcare costs, you have to have price transparency. You have to know how much things cost. That bill was a massive win that came out of my committee We passed it out of the House in a bipartisan fashion. Why didn't anyone ask Bernie Sanders that question? Why would he refuse? Why would he refuse to bring that to the committee? I'm not done. I'm not done. I'm not done here.
But hold on,
I got another
hold on
thing.
1 second. Let me just say, because I want to keep the conversation.
But I want to hold on.
I understand that you do. But listen, I want to speak to that because I do think we heard today from AOC. She was also talking about how she was working with Republicans on reforming PBMs, these sort of middlemen in healthcare.
Working on anything. We've had that bill. We've had that bill out there forever. I support it. We all support it. It is bipartisan.
She said it was bipartisan, and she said it wasn't brought. It wasn't brought to, or it was killed. She said by Elon Musk and by Donald Trump siding with Elon Musk. So there's a whole slew of healthcare things that are going nowhere because both parties won't come to the table.
That was PBM reform. We're all supportive of that too. We're going to get that through. Why did Bernie Sanders stop this one though? Because this was
transparency. So why don't you go back
to
Washington and make that part of the negotiation?
Why don't you go sit down with Bernie and talk it out?
I guess this is an opportunity, though, Congressman.
$35 insulin caps. That came from Donald Trump.
Hold on,
cost sharing reduction, which would have actually decreased the debt while also.
I don't think you can talk about decreasing. I don't think you can talk about reducing insulin prices without.
Me because you don't want to hear what Republicans have done to decrease healthcare costs.
I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you because you want to read a list on a television show. That's a conversation show. That is why I'm interrupting you.
But I'm giving you a list.
I'm sorry. But I want to ask you a question, okay? The question is, why not take all of these issues and sit down and address them, address the subsidies, address the list of things you've got there.
All of our Republican
and also, by the way,
we will absolutely do that.
Congressman, now you're interrupting me. Now you're interrupting me.
Stop screwing over federal workers.
November is right around the corner. We keep hearing that this doesn't really go into effect until then. November is right around the corner. Isn't now, though, the time to address this issue and maybe to take some of those things that you're talking about, put it in a package and work on it together? I mean, I'm asking you because you're actually in a position to do something about it.
I'm just impressed by your all's ability to twist these things around.
Nobody is twisting.
Nobody is twisting.
We are literally saying, ask Bernie Sanders the question.
Healthcare.
Why are these guys like Dan Crenshaw all such smug pricks? All of the MAGA people are such smug pricks. It's always smirking and making jokes and being sarcastic and all that. When, Abby Phillip asks Dan Crenshaw a direct question and Ana Navarro and the others are just like, hey, just get back to Washington and negotiate. But it's always with MAGA. Yeah, but what about the Democrats? What about AOC? What about this thing that Bernie Sanders did? We're doing all this stuff for healthcare, but Bernie Sanders, he won't help us. What about AOC? And they're saying, just get back to Washington and negotiate. But again, Dan Crenshaw talks about Democrats being gaslighters. Everything with MAGA is projection. We know that MAGA is the gaslighters. They don't want to do anything about healthcare. They want the subsidies to go away because their donors don't want to pay a tiny bit more in taxes to provide for these subsidies so people can actually afford healthcare. They want that to go away. They don't care about federal workers losing their jobs. Dan Crenshaw pretends like he does. And we had the great comment here from Jennifer Welch. And I wish we would see more of this on actual television, on these TV news programs, where she calls Mike Johnson, Moses Mike Johnson, that he's, this great Christian, but he doesn't care about poor people. He doesn't care about sick people. He cares about CEOs and billionaires, just like all the rest of MAGA, and unfortunately, most of the Democratic Party too. But these clowns, like Dan Crenshaw, they come on Abby Phillip's show every night to blame the Democrats for the shutdown and say, hey, let's just get back to work and negotiate. And when the government reopens, if the subsidies haven't been reinstated, they will just expire. And all those people will lose their subsidies, and a whole bunch of people in the United States won't be able to afford insurance anymore. They already were struggling to afford it, but even more will not be able to afford it. And it will be the fault of Dan Crenshaw and these other MAGA people who go on and spin every night on Abby Phillip's show. Let me know what you think about all this. Did you agree with what Abby Phillip and Ana Navarro and the other moderates, I would say, on this panel have to say, or do you agree with Dan Crenshaw and the rest of MAGA that this is all the fault of Democrats? Let me know in the comments what you think. Make sure to give me a like and subscribe. I'm Chris on Culture, and I'll see you in the next video.